Hello, my name is Jacob Totson, and welcome back to the Wisdom of Odin. Today I'm going to have a very chaotic video for you, and I really have no idea how it's going to turn out at the time of filming this. Behind me here is the British National Museum, housing over 8 million different artifacts and being established 250 years ago, more than 250 years ago. And it's going to take all day to go through, but primarily what I'm searching for, of course, is any artifacts pertaining to the pagan past, the pre-Christian past of Iron Age and Bronze Age Northern Europe. I know one of the most famous artifacts here is the helmet of Sutton Hoo, and so we're definitely going to be checking that out. I'll be getting lots of footage for you, and if I can find places to film, I'll be whispering some behind-the-scenes stuff for you and giving you some interesting details on artifacts in here. I know I've already been looking up some of them, and if I can find them, I'm really excited to show you some of them, as a lot of them are very rare artifacts from the early days of Britain, when they were actually practicing pagans and had a very unique practice behind them as they interacted with the Romans. So with that, let's go ahead and get in here and show you the British National Museum and what artifacts we can find inside. So it's going to be very hard to film any kind of bits in here. I'm going to do my best, but their backgrounds may not be that interesting. But definitely, this is the largest museum I have ever been in, and it's free, which is really crazy to me because most museums in the States are definitely not free. There are so many different exhibits here. I don't think you can take it all in one day. This is a multiple day thing if you want to see everything. So let's go find some really old stuff. Take me very long. The stone right behind me here has some early examples of Irish ogham. I think it's actually what it's called. I've been saying ogham. A lot of people say ogham, but ogham on the stone behind me here. What I find very interesting about ogham in general is that it fulfills a very similar purpose to rune stones in Scandinavia, even though this is found in Ireland. And they've also been found, ogham has also been found in the Pictish world as well. And so this is just a memorial stone to someone who died. So the fact that we have traditions very similar, written on very similar things, just different languages that fulfilled similar purposes. That's the kind of stuff I really like about the ancient world. So this is the earliest point of European, history. And so I'm going to search for some interesting cultural or religious artifacts in here and report back to you. I think this is going to work out pretty well. It's not too crowded in here. So this right here, 10,000-year-old mask. Look at that. It's got little eye holes and everything. So they don't know if this was used for hunting or ceremonial purposes. Obviously, I'm inclined to say it's for ceremonial purposes because that's very spooky and I like it and I want to wear it. So yeah, I think that's really cool. And for all the people out there who say we shouldn't put antlers on our head, here's a great example of people who've been doing that for thousands of years. Right over here, this little clay figure, if you can see, this is an 5,000-year-old idol made out of clay that no one really knows what it is. Now, the most obvious suggestion is that it could be a household deity or a deity that, we just don't know the name of. Obviously, we're not going to know the name of this because they didn't have a writing system, but it is very eerie to look at. I really like the form and the shape. So you decide, is it an ancient deity or an ancient alien? Quick rapid fire round here. We got ancient drums made out of chalk. That's interesting. And then over here, I saw some of these in Scotland as well. There are these just little stone balls that have unique shapes and have been found scattered across the British Isles, mostly in Scotland. So no one really knows what they are, but they are quite funky. So you decide again, ancient deities or ancient aliens? All right, so right behind me here as I slip into the shadows, this is a bronze shield from 2,000 years ago found in Wales. So long before the Swedes and the Scandinavians came over. And yet these almost exact bronze ceremonial shields, because there's no way this is used for fighting, this exact bronze shield has been found in many Swedish graves as well. And I think just Scandinavian graves in general, often left as a ceremonious object. And so you have people in Wales doing this 2,000 years ago. As far as I know, you have people in Scandinavia doing it around that same time. Interesting connections. These are the questions I always have going into these places. It's like, wait, so these people knew each other, and yet they were very distant from what we know of history. Fascinating stuff. here's an interesting one as well right here. So this gold cape was also found in Wales from around the same time period as the shield I just showed you. I've never seen this before, never even heard of it, but it's entirely made of gold from what I can tell. It was discovered in the 1800s and it's been reconstructed from its original form. And they carefully tested it on a person, and whoever wore this was very restricted from movement. And so their only thought is this was a ceremonious object. Now that could have been for royalty, but typically royalty and ceremony and religion were all kind of wrapped together at some point. So this gold cape, more than likely, in my professional opinion, was used for some kind of religious ceremony 3,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago in Wales. Just going for it here. So right here we have the transition into the Iron Age and the Celtic era of the exhibit. Some notable things right here. And again, this is Celtic. If you need more proof that I'm not, bullshitting you here, here is a map of what Celtic means here in the museum. So Celtic is a very broad term. So anyways, some of the interesting things over here. This shield, absolutely gorgeous, beautiful. Probably not religious in origin, but absolutely gorgeous. Further down, we have a horned helmet found in the River Thames, so around where I'm at currently in London. And again, no one really knows what this is. It's very rare find as far as like a horned helmet. Again, horned helmets more than likely were ceremonious. And then down here we have a mirror. What is interesting about this mirror is the description below saying, oh, we mostly find these mirrors in southern England. We don't really find them anywhere else at this time period. And yet at the same time period, the Picts were carving this dang mirror almost exactly further north up in Scotland. The dang Picts knew about this mirror or carving it, but we haven't found any up there. But we found some down here. History is wild. Very interesting. I love it though. Why were the Picts drawing it? And why have we only found them in the South? I may not be an official historian, but I did take art history. And one of those things I learned in art history is the history is a lot of pots. And let me tell you, they're kind of boring to me. And this is probably why I never actually became an official historian. It's because I really don't want to have to look at pots all day. And now we've entered the Roman section of the Roman interaction with the British Isles at the time. We didn't have a lot of artifacts from the Iron Age because this was pre-Roman basically, and a lot of what we know from that kind of past is very limited to archaeological data, whereas the Romans were making tons of art, they were building cities, and they were writing things down. So typically we have much more information about the Roman interactions during that time period with the British Isles. And yeah, this is such a massive museum. This is only one section. I feel like I've been here for hours. But on this map right here, you can see the extent of Rome's interaction with the British Isles going all the way up into Scotland. And then eventually the Roman Empire was collapsing and they eventually left. But there was tons of battles, tons of conquests, tons of history. I mean, right here on this island of Anglesey is where the last stand of the Druids supposedly was. You had the raids of Boudica, all things I'm going to be talking about in the channel moving forward. But let's see what kind of artifacts we can find while I'm in here right now. So the amount of religious iconography is sadly very low in this room, but I figured this would be a good precursor as I'm going to actually start making more content about the Roman interactions with pagan religions, or at least like the way they interacted with them in general. So essentially how they reacted, they would come into a new area, they would look at those deities and be like, hey, keep worshiping your gods, pay us taxes, adopt our language, we're going to teach you how to write, and, submit some troops to the legions. And that's basically how they conquered most territories. And if they didn't do that, then they would then try to invade forcibly and then bring people into the Roman Empire. And as I've researched more into the Roman Empire, they've really been doing this since their beginning, is when they take new lands, they adopt people and then replace them with Romans. And so that's what we see with a lot of the artwork from the areas that they actually conquered and invaded, or at least tried to invade. And so a lot of the iconography about Celtic deities transitioned into Roman iconography, but there was a transitional period, and you can see some of that style changing over time. A few other things to note, votive shrines became popular at this time as well, and then Romanizing the names of certain deities. And so a lot of the deities we learn about from ancient Britain, all across the British Isles, are Romanized names. A good example of this comes from the Netherlands with Nehalennia, a goddess that I venerate personally. However, with Nehalennia, that's a Romanized name, and we actually don't know the original name of Nehalennia. And this is true for a lot of what happened to the early Britons as well. So much of the religious iconography that is left in this exhibit is all through here. Probably the most famous and probably the most known for this area is this serving platter dedicated to Oceanus. Now, Oceanus was the Roman god of the sea. So, I mean, obviously this is a Roman related thing, but it's an absolutely beautiful piece. And we don't hear much about the dedication to Oceanus. And I don't think many of us actually realize that the word for ocean that we still use today comes from Oceanus, the Roman god of the seas. And so I always find that interesting. There's a few other things scattered about here that I was kind of able to find, and I've kind of shown you throughout this, but I haven't really found anything that's awe-inspiring. Right here is a hoard to a possible British deity. There's some offerings that were tossed into the healing pools at Bath, which I'm going to be talking about in a future video. But in general, the Roman relationship to the Celtic and early Britain people, again, was, hey, keep worshiping. We're going to teach you some language, pay us taxes, give us soldiers, and comply or we'll invade you. That was basically how it would go. And then the culture kind of transitioned and morphed and changed, and which is one of the reasons it's really hard to research the early British religion, because it was so Romanized. And again, this is something I'm going to be talking about in the future. But yeah. Last section we actually have to talk about here is the Anglo-Saxon, Pictish, Celtic, Viking era that happened right towards the end of the pagan era and the conversion era into Christianity. And so the first thing to actually talk about here comes from around 700. That comes from France, really, but it was here in display. Absolutely incredible piece. It's called the Frankish casket. Absolutely beautiful, decorated with runes throughout. Now, this is a Christian piece. However, it does feature several motifs and several stories from the Anglo-Saxon era, including a story about Wayland the Smith, which is a pretty famous and well-known Anglo-Saxon myth because it's one of the few that actually has survived. And so the story of Wayland is very similar to the story of Voland, which I'll be exploring, and the sense that he was captured by a king to smith. He goes against the king, kills his sons, and then forges cups out of the skulls of his sons. And so this is depicted on this casket. Now, the casket itself is made of whalebone, and again, is just highly detailed. Now, the other story on the top is a story that's incomplete, and we really don't know that much about, which is sad because we really don't know that much about specific Anglo-Saxon history and mythology. And this story is about a person named Egil who is fending off people with a bow. And I think Wayland's involved in some way, if I read that plaque correctly. And then there's other stories about the birth of Romulus and Remus and their nursing by the she-wolf. There's also a story about the three magi, and then something about Jerusalem on there as well. So a very intricate box, and represents stories from the Roman era, the Christian era, and the pagan era within mythology. So just really fascinating. But yeah, I'm going to go in there and see what else there's to find. But I think the main thing is going to be the Sutton Hoo hoard and the Sutton Hoo helmet. I just saw the Sutton Hoo stuff and read all of it. Admittedly, I didn't know that much before coming here. So a quick recap, if you don't know, the Sutton Hoo helmet and the Sutton Hoo burial mound is one of the most famous finds in all of British history, but also one of the few artifacts from the Anglo-Saxon era. In fact, the section here in the British Museum is not very big on the Anglo-Saxons. That's because their timeline was not very long for their unique existence. So after the fall of Rome, Anglo-Saxons, being Germans, started migrating to the British Isles. And they were here for about 200 years, and around 100 years in is when Christianity started moving in, and the unique culture and unique mythology of the Anglo-Saxons began to dissipate. Now, of course, they were very similar to their Scandinavian brothers and sisters, as well as mainland Germany. So a lot of what they believed in is very similar to what we know about Norse mythology. However, they had many distinct variations, and I think you can see that within their work. Now, they also had lots of commonalities, most notably the amount of depictions of spear dancers. There are several objects here that actually witness and show spear dancers that have been found elsewhere in the ancient world. Now, the actual Sutton Hoo burial mound itself, of course, is quite marvelous. The helmet that has been found there is very popular, and it is something to behold. I mean, they have a reconstructed form that shows what it might have looked like in the past, and they actually did say that it was used in battle at least once, as it shows signs of damage from battle. So it wasn't just a ceremonious thing. And so obviously the person buried here was a king. Now, something that I think a lot of people don't realize when they just kind of gloss over history is the Sutton Hoo helmet is not, of course, a Viking Age helmet. It's not a Viking helmet. This is an Anglo-Saxon burial mound and Anglo-Saxon finds. One important note about the helmet that I overheard from a tour is that the bird figure that actually adorns the front of the helmet has ruby eyes, and that one of the eyes was purposely made a different way, so that way when light reflects into it, it actually doesn't shine. And so one eye shines while the other one does not. Does that sound like something to you? So there's definitely motifs of other pagan ideas in here, including Odin. I mean, this mask was very heavily Odin based, if it did include spear dancers on it originally. And then, of course, if it has one eye blacked out, there's definitely an Odin influence here as well. Some important notes before I have to move on, as I think I have a security person circling me, is the fact that there were other things found in this hoard, of course, including a drinking horn, remnants of a lyre, and then remnants of a cauldron as well, and then a weapon, as well as a really highly decorated shield. And so all of these pieces are incredibly beautiful. All right, we have reached the end of this video. I'm absolutely exhausted. I probably only covered 10% of this total museum. Obviously, I wanted to find all the stuff pertaining to Bronze and Iron Age pagan Europe. I think I went through most of it. I hope I was able to record and share with you the majority of artifacts that have to deal with this time period and with this belief system. I did a walkthrough of everything else. There's so much here. There's ancient Egyptian, ancient Sumerian, Mesopotamian, and then 20 different floors I haven't seen or experienced. So definitely highly recommend coming here. It's free, it's massive, and there's lots of really good stuff here. The Sutton Hoo helmet definitely being one of the biggest things here, and for a reason. It's really beautiful. And again, to me, they didn't say that it had a connection to Odin, but the two eyes, one not shining, completely connected to Odin. You got spear dancers on there. Absolutely incredible. So if you like this video, please make sure you like and subscribe and all that good stuff. Honestly, today was absolutely exhausting trying to find places to film. So if you like the content here, please think about supporting me on Patreon. It's how I'm able to come to these places and share them with all of you. So please think about going down below and supporting me there. And with that, I am off to get some rest and maybe a cup of coffee, and I will see you in the next adventure here in Northern Europe.